All right, and welcome everyone to this edition of The Bishop and the Rabbi. We are so glad that you have tuned in. And as you come on in, sign in and let us know that you're watching. Let us know where you're watching from, not only around America, but around the world. Our global audience is growing, and that has been just amazing to see folks tuning in literally from all around the world. I was on the phone today with a leading pastor in our nation. Pastors a very significant church in the South. And he called me today. He said, I want to tell you, Bishop, he said, every week I am listening to the Bishop and the Rabbi. He doesn't tune in live. He gets it on our podcast. And I want to let you know that you can go and download Bishop and the Rabbi at your convenience on podcast form. You can do that on Apple, on Spotify, on really all the places that podcasts are available. So sign up for it that way as well. So when you're exercising, you're driving in the car, you're shopping, whatever you're doing, you've got that there, and that'll be just fantastic for you. Good. Go ahead and continue to sign in. Let us know your name, where you're watching from. Help us out by hitting the share button. It really does help us with our algorithms and getting the message out if you'll hit the share button and invite others to join in with you. A few announcements before I introduce our esteemed guest. We want to let you know that we are continuing in our weekly class through the Book of Numbers. We were doing that in sync with each of the parshas, the parshiot, but Mark Gerson's class has been so incredible, and so many of you have signed up for it, that he's extended it. So we're taking it at a slightly lower pace. I think we've got about another 4 weeks that we're going to be going. So that is Torah Tuesdays with Mark Gerson. That's at noon every Tuesday, and that is available to pastors and to Eagles Wings partners. So if you are a partner with this ministry, then we invite you to be a part of Torah Tuesdays. And if you're not a partner, you can text to give tonight. Text the word give to 716-707-3007. Would you please become a partner? When you become a partner, you are helping facilitate the historic conversation between Judaism and Christianity that is happening through Eagles Wings literally all over the world. I got a phone call yesterday from Brazil, from Teo Hayashi, who is the leading apostolic figure in Brazil. He's in regular communication with the president of Brazil. And he said, Robert, we are absolutely committed. We want Eagles Wings presence to grow in Brazil. We were on the phone this week with our pastors in Germany, who are really going through a very difficult time right now for a lot of reasons. In Germany, Europe is seeing a rise of anti-Semitism again. And the need for Bible-believing Christians to link arms, link hearts, link faith with the Jewish people and with the state of Israel has never been more urgent. And for $18 a month, less than $1 a day, 65 cents a day, you can join this global movement of Jerusalem-based Christianity. What does Jerusalem-based Christianity look like? That's what we are walking out. And by doing that, you help us with our Abraham's Bread outreach. Abraham's Bread is feeding hundreds of needy people throughout Israel through our feeding center in Jerusalem and in Tiberias. We got an email today from Mimi, who leads our centers there. And now they've had to pivot with COVID. So they're going to the homes of shut-ins. They're delivering meals. We've sent you videos about that. All of these things that are happening, please become a partner. It's vital. I need to hear from you today so that you'll support all that's happening. And again, text the word give to 716-707-3007 to become a part of this global movement of Jerusalem-based Christianity. Hit the share button. Tell us who's on, who's watching tonight as we launch this very exciting edition of Bishop and the Rabbi. And I am super, super excited about tonight's guest. And, you know, I have many wonderful friends in the rabbinic community, thank God, across America and around the world. But I have to say, with genuine transparency tonight, Rabbi Daniel Kraus, there's a beautiful Yiddish word, a mensch. Rabbi Daniel Kraus is very, very special. He is someone whose heart and values and kindness and genuine care shine through everything he does. I have received just personal texts and prayers and blessings from him. He's a genuine friend. He's an amazing leader of the Jewish people. In a moment, you're going to hear his very cool accent because he's from Australia. I thought if I ever want to live anywhere other than America and Israel, it'll be Australia. That just seems like the coolest place. But he's from Australia. He moved to America 15 years ago with his beautiful wife. They have 4 incredible children. I've been blessed to be in their home. He is part of the ministry team with Rabbi Chaim Steinmetz. You all remember Rabbi Steinmetz. He was with us, I'm going to say, a month ago or so. And we love the community at Kehilat Jeshurun there in Manhattan. In addition to working on the ministry team there, he is part of what's known as Birthright Israel. Birthright Israel is an amazing organization that allows every Jewish young person, I think ages 18 to 26, they have the opportunity to go to Israel for free because the Jewish community wants to always fight assimilation. We don't want to lose Jewish people, have them lose their identity just by assimilating into broader culture. We want them to stay rooted and connected to their land, their people, their culture, their covenant, and their God. And so Birthright Israel is a very important part of that, and Rabbi helps to head up that very, very important initiative as well. And so, Rabbi, you have been amazing. Some of our folks know you because you gave the blessing. You gave the hamotzi at the Eagles Wings Jerusalem banquet. I think it was the night that we honored Kathy Lee Gifford. I think it was that evening. You were with us there in Manhattan. But Rabbi Daniel Kraus, welcome to Bishop and the Rabbi.
Thank you so much, both for the humbling introduction, but really for the opportunity to be with you tonight. I'm like a armchair fan of this podcast and this show, and I've been watching some of the colleagues in the rabbinical world that I respect have been featured, and I've just been waiting for this opportunity. So I'm so excited to be here. And I want to echo what you said and really turn it back to you. I have grown as an individual, as a rabbi and as a thought leader by our relationship, by our many conversations, both casual, philosophical, and what you are doing in the world, what you are doing throughout this pandemic, in building these partnerships, in amplifying the need for us as clergy to collaborate and to deepen our relationships is so needed for the world. And I just want to salute you, salute Eagles Wings, and really thank you for this opportunity. I'm excited for this discussion. So thank you for welcoming me tonight.
Well, we are thrilled to have you. It's taken a while to get on your dance card because you are very, very busy and you're doing great work. But you know, there's a perfect time for everything, right? Ecclesiastes, there's a time for everything. And your time was to teach us Devarim, right? So that's what Hashem had. It's kind of an important night because we're leaving the book of Numbers and we're coming into the book of Deuteronomy. And so I invite you all to get your Bibles out, to get ready to follow along, because we've come out of the book of Numbers, an amazing story that we've been through there. And we're entering now tonight in the Parsha Devarim, which they'll have up on the screen there in a moment behind me. We're entering into this discussion in the book of Deuteronomy. And also, Rabbi, just to mention briefly, and we'll talk about this more later, but a reminder for everybody, we're also in this unusual period called the 3 weeks, which started on the 17th of Tammuz, which is a fast day, which commemorates, in a sad way, the breaching of the walls of Jerusalem, which leads ultimately to the destruction of the temple, which of course is coming up just several days from now at Tisha B'Av. So we're in this moment of the 3 weeks, which is this kind of momentous day, this momentous season of commemorating the sadness. And you know, Rabbi, one just interesting not pop culture, but cultural reference would be, everybody knows the tradition at a Jewish wedding, right? That, you know, they say the vows and then there's this glass and the groom breaks the glass with his foot as everybody says Mazel Tov. And so many times people go, well, what does that have to do with anything? But that's really right about this moment that we're in, isn't it? It's about Tisha B'Av. So tell us about that, Rabbi.
Number one, this could be called the Rabbi and the Rabbi, as far as I'm concerned so far. But you're correct. And not only are we going to be turning a new leaf in the last chapter and the last book of the Torah, the fifth book, the Book of Deuteronomy, is Devarim, we're also in this unique time period known as the 3 weeks. And you mentioned so eloquently that it begins on the 17th of Tammuz and concludes on the 9th of Av. The 9th of Av being the saddest day in the Jewish calendar. And we'll get to that in a moment. But just to contextualize this 3-week period, for 830 years, there stood an edifice in Jerusalem, top a hilltop, that served as the major point of contact between us human beings and the Almighty.
Right.
And it was so central to our relationship that so many of the rituals and the customs that we as Jewish people did involved coming to the temple, offering so many different sacrifices. And its destruction is really regarded as one of the greatest tragedies of our history. And therefore, its hopeful rebuilding is therefore pivoted to also be one of the happiest moments of our relationship. So this 3-week time period here in America is a sad time period when we have designated aspects of mourning over the destruction of the temple, and we not just having a recognizing the physical exile, but really a spiritual displacement, and we work internally on ourselves, and certainly in the time period in the country right now, it's wonderful to parallel the two, think about how we can use this time on the calendar to really reflect on so much is happening around us. And the 9th of Av, which will fall next week, really focuses the moment of intensity around the destruction and the mourning. But to your point about the glass at the wedding, it's sometimes so countercultural because people are so ready and excited to jump in with excitement. It's like, hold on one second, vows are done. We've signed everything we need to sign. We're going to take this special moment to break a glass. And there are different customs, what exactly happens. But ultimately, the groom and the bride breaks the glass. And every rabbi usually makes the joke that's the last time the groom gets to put his foot down in the relationship. But the truth is that we take this ultimate peak of joy. And for a bride and groom standing under their wedding canopy, their chuppah, is most likely the highest joy they've yet to experience in life. And we say, even in these moments of our intense joy, we pause, reflect, and we feel the pinch that we don't yet have the temple rebuilt in Jerusalem. And until we have that, there's still not going to be complete satisfaction, joy. So we just step off that cliff for a moment. We recognize that pinch, that sting that still exists. And then the rest of the wedding is celebration and party and fun and merriment. And that's sort of a beautiful moment that happens at the end of every Jewish wedding ceremony for hundreds and hundreds of years around the world.
Now, Rabbi, I don't want to delay us from getting into the Parsha, but I want to just pause here for a quick moment, because your thought here is hearkening back to something that Mark Gerson said in our Book of Numbers class the other day, when he talked about how much of Judaism and Jewish practice has to do with the concept of remembrance. That so much of Judaism is really founded in the concept of remembrance, right? So if you're looking at Pesach, well, the whole Passover meal is, remember, we were slaves in Egypt. And it's this multi-sensory telling of the story. I think the way Mark brought it up, if I'm remembering, was he was talking about the tassels, the talit and the talit and the tzitzit. He's talking about the tzitzit, and that you should wear the tzitzit on the four corners of your garment, because wherever you are, you're going to look down and you're going to glance. You're going to remember, okay, I'm a part of this covenant people. I'm a part of carrying the image of God, and I need to bear remembrance to that, right? And then we have the mezuzah, right? The mezuzot on the doorposts, that as we walk in and out, we have this consciousness of God. And so now you're even bringing up another example, not a biblical example, but a cultural example, that in the moment of greatest joy, of the highest simcha, the greatest joy you could have, your wedding moment, you're still remembering the pain of the destruction of Jerusalem. And so I think this is just an incredibly powerful aspect to Jewish religious tradition. I'm trying to think within Christianity, the closest thing we have, of course, is our celebration of communion, where we are remembering the death of Jesus. But that's remembering his death, not necessarily our communal experience. Just before we get into Deuteronomy, just reflect on this concept of remembrance as, if you will, remembrance as a tutor for our souls, as a teacher for our spirits.
Remembrance is such a powerful catalyst within the Jewish religion, both calendrically at the various times throughout the year, daily, as you reference through the tassels, through the tzitzit, through the skull cap and the remembrance of the presence of a higher figure above us, through so many different visuals. You also mentioned the mezuzah, but it's really memory, I would say, that has allowed us to hold on to the thousands of years of history. And it's really, our religion is based on a foundation of collective memory, back to the moment at Sinai. But we think about memory, it's not just about the current things, it's also looking back at Scripture. And we remember the Sabbath day is an element in Exodus. And remember the evil Amalek, and remember the destruction and the enemy that they brought upon you. And all those memories, and the reasons that we keep them alive, is because they define us and they keep us focused on our goal and our national mission. And we stand as individuals on the shoulders of all those who came before us, but as a people, we stand also on the generations that came before us. And memory is deeply ingrained within Jewish thought. I believe it was the Baal Shem Tov, the famous founder of the Hasidic movement, who famously said, and I'm going to paraphrase, but he said that forgetfulness leads to exile, while remembrance is the secret to redemption. And I think those beautiful, powerful words are
Can you repeat that for us, Rabbi?
Sure. With the accent or without the accent? That forgetfulness leads to exile, while remembrance is the secret of redemption.
Now, I and again, we're going down a bunny trail here, and I'll pull us into Deuteronomy in a moment, but we have to reflect.
Yes, so we can go whatever direction you want.
We have to reflect on this in light of what our nation, America, and I don't know if you've become a citizen or not. Forgive me, I should know that, but your adopted nation, America.
I'm a permanent resident alien who has an application to become a citizen.
All right. Please God. So we have to reflect on that at this moment, right? Because I'm thinking, for example, I had a conversation last week with someone who was having conversations with people at work, and somehow Christmas came up at work, and no one knew what the celebration of Christmas was. No one in the workplace. He's having a conversation, and there's it's Santa Claus and it's gift giving, but the religious significance had been completely erased from the memory of these millennials that he was working with. And you look at, of course, Easter, which now has been totally, at any kind of and though Easter, of course, these are both Christian holidays, Easter, the story of rebirth and resurrection and hope, there's universal themes there that have absolutely nothing to do with bunnies and eggs. And so when we lose, and now we're living in a moment where we're tearing statues down all across the country. And listen, perhaps there are some statues that need to be torn down. I don't know. I heard someone told me that one statue in particular that was torn down was of someone who had been a founder of the Ku Klux Klan. And if that's true, then of course I think that should have been torn down. But when we're tearing down statues left and right, rather than, I'm saying, why don't you put up an extensive plaque next to these statues? And now we begin to talk about, upon reflection, here are some of the weaknesses of this individual. Here is some of what history learned. But if we just wholesale erase memory, if all we do is erase memory and we don't learn from history, we just seek to erase it, what do we have? Where are we starting from? There's a verse, Rabbi, I think it's Psalm 19:11, but it says, when the foundations are destroyed, what can the righteous do? When the foundations are destroyed, what can the righteous do? And I'm fearful that that's where we're living.
For those reasons and so many other, memory and history are so important to us, not just as Jews, but to humanity. We're living in a time where the millennials and the Gen Z are, for the most part, this is well documented in many studies, are SBNRs. They're spiritual but not religious. And they're searching for something, but it's not based in anything. And to paraphrase the wonderful the the director of education of Birthright Israel, he says the generation now of millennials and Gen Z, we can bucket them together, they all are surfers and there are no divers. Everybody wants to be an expert in touching something, grabbing a wave, but no one wants to take a deep dive into understanding, into learning, into deepening their whole holistic approach. Because we live in a clicking age where we click and we surf and we surf through social media and everything else, and we don't attach to anything deep. And that's, to your point, having a plaque, having a representation of understanding, of knowing the significance is maybe a much better route than the crazy vitriolic animosity and attacks that are happening in so many different ways, and where, you know, these times are also causing a great search for spirituality.
Yes, absolutely.
For religion and for meaning.
Yeah.
And I really, that's why I come back to the opening comments of praise, but like this podcast and so many other mediums that you are behind are so important, such an important voice to put out there, that this is one humanity, and we are one blessed citizens of the world. And we might look different skin color, different faiths, different accents, different likes, but we need to work in a collaborative partnership way.
Well, we are going to dive deep tonight, and we're going to dive deep into Devarim. So here we go. We're diving deep into Deuteronomy chapter 1. We have this amazing story that begins to open up for us. Moses is coming, Moshe Rabbeinu is coming towards the end of his earthly journey. Joshua has been kind of deputized now to begin to lead the people. And it's a big moment of transition here in Deuteronomy. Rabbi, take it away and lead us through this parsha.
Thank you. So, you know, it's a perfect setup, and there's lots written about in the timing of Deuteronomy before Tisha B'Av, and how it always falls, both the Torah reading in this time of year, and it's really the first reflection of Moses looking back on his long journey. And we closed the chapter last week on the Book of Numbers. We recite the tradition to recite the famous verse, Chazak, Chazak, Manid Chazek, which should be strengthened. And now as we begin the fifth book of the Torah, and the final book of the Torah, it's really, for the most part, a big monologue. It's 5 weeks, 37 days before Moses passes away. And he starts to recount his story of the Israelites' travel through the desert. He places emphasis on where they've been. He places emphasis on rebuke. He focuses again on the story of the spies, and there's lots of linguistic nuances in how these are retold and things that we could pick up and discuss. He describes the conquest of certain nations around them, and he focuses on the transition of leadership. And I was reflecting, as I do in preparation for the study of the weekly Torah portion with my family, and one of the many blessings of this crazy pandemic has been the discussions that I've been blessed to have together with my wife, with our kids every Shabbat, and to sort of take a deeper dive into the Torah portion that we typically might not have had a chance to do pre-COVID. Shabbat pre-COVID and Shabbat post-COVID have been very different, and certainly Shabbat during COVID. And in a way, Shabbat is this island of time to really take a deeper dive with less distractions than one typically had before, certainly in my line of work. And I was thinking about there's no struggle or challenge in human history without a divine accompaniment. And as we look at the beginning of Moses' lengthy address to the Jewish people, and he prepares them for the transition, not just in leadership, but also into the beloved Holy Land, he reminds them that they're not alone. And he has a famous sentence, Deuteronomy 2:6, that you have a Bible in front of you, you can follow along with me, where he says, God has blessed you in all your undertakings, he's watched over your wanderings through the great wilderness, and God has been with you for these past 40 years. You have lacked nothing. And the teaching here that the Midrash suggests is that the verse he is referring to the physical comfort. For 40 years in the desert, you withstood anything around you because God gave you shelter, and God gave you food, and God gave you clothing, and you lack nothing. But I was reflecting on this and thinking that perhaps more metaphorically, he understands that God is sending a message that I think is so relevant and amplified in July 2020, as we live in unprecedented time. And he's sending a message to the Jewish people and to the world at large, that when we feel down, as we did throughout that 40-year wandering experience, going around in circles, not being able to go to the land of Israel, when we feel empty, when we feel we're in this desert and we don't know how to get out of there, that we're never alone. And becoming aware of this reality that God is with us, God is present, that pain will dissipate, and you ultimately will feel that you lack nothing. And I think summer 2020 is, for many, is beset with very conflicting emotions. Many people are used to doing very different things in summertime. Relaxing, traveling, exploring, and reflecting on the state of the world can be very scary for us to acknowledge, and can bring us to a level of despair and hopelessness. And I think knowing in these moments of our own desert experiences that God is with us can make it feel that much better. It can make it be that much more manageable. And I think that that's a beautiful takeaway, to look at this exploration of the monologue of Moses, to know that you lack nothing because God is with us in everything that we do. And
so we're in chapter 2, verse 7, and it's that phrase, these 40 years, the Lord your God has been with you. You have lacked nothing. And you're making this beautiful correlation that it's not only that they've lacked nothing physically, because of course they had the manna and they had the ravens, and right, even the scripture says their shoes did not wear out. Their shoe leather was...
Clothing did not wear out throughout their whole time, which isn't good for the industry, but it's a miracle that certainly worked for them. They had the miraculous well of Miriam, Moses' sister, that was an eternal water source. They had warmth and illumination from the clouds of glory and the pillars of fire above them. And they had the famous manna that was with them every single day except for Shabbat.
So for the Christian ear, for the Christian concept, the beauty of this comes for us. We resonate very strongly with Isaiah, the 53rd chapter. We view that Christologically. But one of the names for God that's very precious in our construct is Emmanuel. Immanuel, right? God with us. That's literally what the scripture is saying here. God with us. And so for us, it's not only that reality of God with us internally in sense of, and another famous verse for us that we quote a lot, it says, in the presence of the Lord, there is fullness of joy. At his right hand, there are pleasures forevermore. So if we have God's presence, if we have God's Shekhinah, if we have God's abiding glory around us because we're living out of that divine connection, then really everything else falls into place, because you can't buy peace. You can't buy, a sense of, those things are spiritual things that come from a sense of connectedness to God that for us ultimately came because we came to know God through Jesus, through Emmanuel, through that expression of God that really led us back to the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. So this is beautiful. Moses is kind of in his departing speech. He's kind of reciting this is his farewell speech. I saw Hamilton the other day, not on the Disney thing, and there was the whole thing of Washington was writing his farewell address. So this is the farewell address.
This is his farewell monologue. We haven't watched Hamilton yet, but we're very excited to
it's long. It's good, but it's long, brother.
It's a powerful lesson that when we feel this hopelessness, and listen, just turning on the computer and looking at the news can give one that feeling, unfortunately. Right. There's always something different. We're living in really a crazy time. But knowing that God is with us is so powerful. And God is in that desert feeling when you look to your left, to your right, up and down, and you can't see anything. It's a powerful idea that we can launch in as we begin the book of Deuteronomy.
Now, Rabbi, another phrase that comes out in this scripture is one that comes out so often in scripture, and it's amazing. And Moses again says to them, fear not, for the Lord your God is with you. And there's this constant declaration to us, don't let fear be the primary motivation or the primary, force in your thought life. And goodness knows, right? There's plenty to be afraid about. There's economic instability. There's political instability. We can go down the line of all the things to be fearful about. And yet God has this clear word to us. He says, if you're in relationship with me, if you truly trust the words of this book, if you're truly walking out a life of congruence with the call of God on your life, then you really don't have to walk in fear. Rabbi, give us 2 or 3 concrete examples of how we can live free from fear, how we can live free from anxiety. What do we have to do with this concept of remembrance practically to help displace fear in our lives and to walk in faith?
Okay, that's a wonderful question with a lot of different directions we can go in. I think that we're also going to focus. There were 6 biblical cities in the land of Israel that were designated to be cities of refuge. And when a person accidentally murdered somebody, they could find safe haven in these cities. These are something which is familiar with you, and this was actually last week's Torah portion in Matot Maseh. And when we feel threatened in any part of our life, we know that we need refuge. We need to find a place where we can feel protected, and those places are the 6 cities of refuge. And I remember learning a beautiful teaching from a Hasidic rabbi who says that the 6 words of the Shema, the foundational prayer of the Jewish people, are where we can immerse ourselves to find comfort and to find safety and to find love. And submitting to God is to find the strength that you need. And so if we think about letting go, maybe we just add that letter D, and we'll just let God feel that we can connect, submit to God, and then we'll find the strength that we need. So to answer your question in a macro way, it's finding your own connection in doing something. And Judaism is a religion. I often say to the many birthright participants that I meet, to Jew is to do. We are a religion of doing. So find that custom, that ritual that you grab and that grabs onto you, and you resonate with, and do something with it and feel that connection.
Now that is powerful right there. I have seen over and over again within the lives of my Jewish friends that whenever tragedy has struck, or whenever difficulty, it's fascinating. The Jewish people immediately say, what can we build constructively out of this tragedy, whatever it is that has happened? And so this is why there are so many Jewish foundations and so many Jewish charities and all of these things, because I've seen this. It's an immediate, the Jewish mind, the Jewish psyche goes to, tragedy has struck, but our God is a restorer. Our God is a redeemer. And so we can partner with Hashem and bring something of beauty, right? Isaiah, beauty for ashes, joy instead of mourning.
Isaiah, and equally Jeremiah in the 31st chapter, that I'll turn your mourning into joy, and I'll make comfort them on rejoice in all their sorrows. And that's one of the secret sources of Jewish thought and belief, that we take that and we're going to spin it into the positive.
I'm just amazing, incredible. Well, I'm hoping that you are getting all of this, folks. I want you to hit the share button, hit the like button, get the word out there. Rabbi is breaking down incredible stuff for us tonight as we are here in chapters 1, 2, and 3 of Deuteronomy. So, Rabbi, as we kind of turn the corner and come toward the end of this portion of this portion of the parsha,
it's
in a Porsche. I want to drive a Porsche as I study the parsha. Somebody help me. All right, so Rabbi, where help us here as we come towards the end. When does Moses leave the scene, or is the whole portion is kind of Moses, isn't it?
Totally, and it's a long speech. He's on the east of the Jordan here, and it's prior to his death, prior to the entry in the Holy Land. And I encourage everyone listening to really take the Bible and read these words. There's such a beautiful, eloquent reflection, and there's lots of comparisons that we can look at of things that Moses draws upon, lessons. We haven't focused, and I don't know if we have the time, but there's so much to talk about in terms of the leadership transition from Moses to Joshua, and the languages used and the reasons and why he articulates.
Well, take the last 3 or 4 minutes and let's talk on that, because I do think, You know, you've touched on something that is, I think, for the heart right now of any spiritual leader in America, there is almost a desperation of saying, how are we going to transfer these things that are so precious to us? How are we going to transfer them to the next generation when these things have taken over people's minds? We have a beautiful tradition within evangelicalism of great hymns. We have beautiful hymns that go back hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. And you know, there's one in particular, I don't know why I'm stuck on this one, but just this week, there's a hymn called "A Mighty Fortress is Our God." And it's just this glorious hymn that speaks of the power, the majesty, the beauty of God. It's beautiful. It was penned in the 1400s.
Wow.
And I'm sitting here thinking to myself, this is going to be the first generation in 600 years that doesn't pass this song on to the next generation. You know, this is a tragedy. And obviously, you know, every single hymn can't be passed on, but we're losing, again, we're right back to what we started with. We're losing memory. We are losing covenantal memory as we pass on to the next generation. Well, somehow Moses was able to pass on to Joshua these principles. So just take the last 3 or 4 minutes that we have together and talk about some of what we can do as communities of faith to pass on leadership to the next generation.
Okay, no pressure, 3 or 4 minutes. Such a powerful question. And remind me next time we gather, I want to learn more about these hymns. And they seem so powerful, and certainly what we can share and study together. I think, you know, the leadership transition is obviously a relevant topic for us in America and really globally, and leadership in general. People are searching, people are yearning, people are looking at leaders. But I think there's another insight that perhaps I can take the next few minutes and sort of glean something that's also equally, if not more relevant. And I think if you read the text, and when we study the Bible in the Jewish religion, there's the text, and there's also the many, many beautiful commentaries that are both ancient and current from modern sages that help sort of color and paint the sort of the depth of what the text is saying and illuminate for us the things that the text is not saying. And a major portion of the speech of Moses is devoted to reviewing the history, and in particular, he seems to catalog the sin and the shortcomings on various occasions of the Jewish people. And he references all the places they traveled and the sins that took place. And the question that we really need to reflect in, this is Moses' monologue, his parting message. Why wait so long to share all these, to reprimand the Jewish people? And we know it's actually a mitzvah. Leviticus tells us, chapter 19, that we have to rebuke thy neighbor. So why did Moses wait such a long time? And Rashi, the famous French commentator who we sort of hand in glove study the Bible with, suggests that he followed the example of Jacob, because Jacob rebuked his sons when? On his deathbed. And the reason he hadn't rebuked Reuben, for example, before that was he feared that if he'd done so, he'd cause a rift between his father and son. So Moses was afraid of what would happen. So he waited till the last moment, and he followed the lesson of Jacob by not attempting to reprimand the Israelites before this moment, because he didn't know if any positive would come from it. So he delayed 40 years. And I think for us, the takeaway here is that how careful we need to be when reprimanding others. And we're living in such a time where this device is filled every moment with attacks left and right on any social media channel.
Wow, absolutely.
We need to take this lesson to heart from a chapter in the opening parts of Deuteronomy, how careful we need to be with our language. And putting the leadership discussion to aside for our next gathering, if we can take this lesson to heart that Moses is giving us, that God is with us in the desert, and he was so careful about his rebuke, he waited till the last minute. Our language, the words that come out of our mouth, are so powerful. And we're living, again, in this time period of the 3 weeks where we're ramping up towards the saddest day of the Jewish calendar, when we know the temple was destroyed. One of the primary reasons was for baseless hatred. Let's make sure that we start to build those blocks, build the blocks of the temple number 3, to rebuild together. And the late Rabbi Cook chief rabbi of Israel, in the very, very, very beginning in 1948, said there's only one cure for baseless hatred, and that is baseless love. Just loving everybody, loving your neighbor.
Beautiful.
Just ping pong the other direction.
Beautiful.
Moses teaches us the power of language. He tells us that God is with us, and it's been a delight to study this together with you tonight.
Rabbi, every time we're together, it's always inspirational. My heart is warmed. You're a wonderful brother. You're a wonderful friend. Thank you for teaching us tonight. Rabbi, how can people follow you? Where do they find you on social media? Do you have a drosh that you put out online? How do they connect with you in your great work?
Thank you. So there's something called Twitter and Instagram that I frequent, like many other people. This is the language of our people. So I'll share with you the handles. On Twitter, it's Rabbi D. Kraus, RABBIDKRAUS, and equally on Instagram. And there are links there to other websites where I publish. But I look forward to doing this again. I say to you and to your community and to the many followers, and hopefully tonight we've definitely reached the shores of Australia as well. And I welcome all the people tuning in from there. L'chaim to you, salute you, Shabbat Shalom, and God bless.
So absolutely. Thank you, Rabbi, so much. And we would be thrilled to have you again. And we do welcome new friends from Australia. Thank you all for tuning in. Hit the share button. And remember to keep praying for the peace of Jerusalem. God bless you.